Few battles in history have captured the imagination like the Battle of Waterloo. On June 18, 1815, two of Europe's greatest military minds, Napoleon Bonaparte and the Duke of Wellington, faced off in a battle that would decide the fate of Europe. This legendary clash marked the end of Napoleon's meteoric rise and fall and reshaped the continent's political landscape. Let's dive into the epic showdown at Waterloo, the strategies of these iconic leaders, and the legacy of this decisive battle. The buildup to Waterloo. By 1815, Napoleon's glory days seemed to be behind him. After years of dominating Europe and reshaping the map with his military genius, he was forced to abdicate in 1814 and exiled to the island of Elba. But Napoleon wasn't ready to give up. In March 1815, he escaped Elba, returned to France, and quickly rallied his supporters, reclaiming his throne in what became known as the 100 Days. Napoleon's return alarmed the major powers of Europe, Britain, Prussia, Austria, and Russia, who had just defeated him a year earlier. They formed the Seventh Coalition to stop him once and for all. Napoleon, knowing his chances of long-term survival depended on a swift victory, decided to strike before the coalition forces could fully unite. In June 1815, Napoleon marched his army north into Belgium, aiming to defeat the British-led forces under the Duke of Wellington and the Prussians under Gebhard Leberecht von Blücher separately. His plan was bold, but everything would come down to a single day, June 18, 1815. The battlefield. The Battle of Waterloo took place near the village of Waterloo in modern-day Belgium. The battlefield was carefully chosen by Wellington, who positioned his forces on a ridge, giving them a defensive advantage. The terrain included rolling hills, muddy fields from recent rains, and key structures like the fortified farmhouse of La Haye-Sainte and the chateau of Hougoumont, which would become focal points of the battle. Napoleon, commanding around 73,000 troops, faced a combined force of 68,000 under Wellington, with the promise of Prussian reinforcements adding urgency to his plans. Confident in his superior tactics and the skill of his veteran soldiers, Napoleon aimed to crush Wellington's army before the Prussians could arrive. The battle begins. Napoleon began the battle with a diversionary attack on Hougoumont, hoping to draw British forces away from the center. However, Wellington held firm, committing just enough troops to defend the chateau while maintaining his main line. The fighting at Hougoumont was intense, with both sides suffering heavy casualties, but it remained in Allied hands. Around midday, Napoleon launched his main assault. His artillery bombarded the Allied lines, and his infantry advanced in massive columns against Wellington's center. Despite the ferocity of the attack, the British and Allied forces, entrenched behind their ridge, held their ground. Meanwhile, Napoleon sent his cavalry in a series of massive charges to break Wellington's lines. British squares, tight formations of infantry designed to repel cavalry, proved incredibly effective, withstanding repeated attacks. The muddy terrain also hindered the French cavalry, preventing them from fully exploiting their momentum. As the battle raged on, news arrived that the Prussian army, under Blücher, was closing in on Napoleon's right flank. Napoleon sent Marshal Grouchy with a detachment to intercept the Prussians, but Grouchy failed to stop them. By mid-afternoon, Prussian forces began arriving on the battlefield, turning the tide against the French. The final blow. In a last-ditch effort, Napoleon ordered his elite Imperial Guard to charge Wellington's center. The Imperial Guard, known for their discipline and bravery, were Napoleon's most feared troops. Their advance was meant to break the Allied lines and secure victory. However, they were met with fierce resistance. British troops held their fire until the Guard was within close range, then unleashed devastating volleys. The Guard faltered and retreated, an unprecedented moment that shattered French morale. With the French army in disarray and the Prussians attacking from the flank, Wellington ordered a general advance. The combined Allied and Prussian forces overwhelmed Napoleon's army, forcing it into a chaotic retreat. By evening, the battle was over, and Napoleon's hopes of reclaiming his empire were crushed. The aftermath. The Battle of Waterloo marked the end of the Napoleonic Wars and Napoleon's final defeat. He fled the battlefield but was captured weeks later and exiled to the remote island of St. Helena, where he spent the rest of his life. The Allied victory at Waterloo brought an end to 2 decades of warfare and ushered in a new era of peace and stability in Europe, known as the Concert of Europe. For Wellington, the victory solidified his reputation as one of Britain's greatest military leaders. The battle showcased his tactical brilliance, defensive strategy, and ability to hold his ground under immense pressure. The legacy of Waterloo. The Battle of Waterloo is more than just a military engagement. It's a symbol of the clash between ambition and resilience, between a man who sought to reshape the world and those determined to stop him. It remains one of the most studied battles in history, a testament to the brilliance of Napoleon and Wellington and the unpredictability of war. Even today, the phrase "meeting your Waterloo" is used to describe a decisive and final defeat. For Napoleon, it was the end of an era. For Europe, it was the beginning of a new balance of power that would last for decades. Conclusion. The Battle of Waterloo was a defining moment in world history. It was the final chapter in Napoleon's extraordinary career and a victory that cemented Britain's status as a global power. The strategies, bravery, and sacrifice on both sides make this battle a timeless story of ambition, determination, and the forces that shape the fate of nations.